on anything in general public comment, item 4? Well,
I'm not seeing anyone, and we do not have anyone waiting in the lobby, Louisa.
All right, very good. As there's no one to speak on general public comment, we move to item 5, consent motions. Are there any consent motions?
Yes, staff had recommended
105 and 237.
yes, 105 and 237 to be considered for consent.
I would like to make that motion.
Pardon me, what about on the second page, 123 Mary for roof replacement?
That is staff level. It was minor work, so it was approved by staff before the meeting, and the staff level approval is on the agenda as a report back to you guys to just let you know what has been approved.
Okay,
but that was previously approved.
And we have a motion, a consent motion for.
Mr. Cropsland, can you just repeat that motion?
Yes, 7, item A and C, that's 105 Middle Street and 237 Bennett Street as recommended by staff.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? I have an opinion on this. 237 Bennett is asking for approval for an exterior color that the commission did not recommend. St. Cecilia is a lovely seafoam gray green, which was not on our approved list. However, I do accept it as an exterior color as presented. Anybody want to say anything about that?
I thought we just approved that.
You haven't voted yet.
We haven't voted. We're in the discussion mode.
Okay, sorry.
I'm the only one who discussed, so I'll call for a vote now.
Yeah, I don't find it to be a color that's disagreeable or out of character with houses of that vintage.
Very good. Okay, so shall we call for a vote? All in favor of approving St. Cecilia for the home at 237th Street, please say aye.
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 No nays? All right, it is approved. Now we can go back and do we have to do another consent, Kate? Or just take those all as consent?
So 105 Middle and 237 Bennett have been approved for consent. So we'll just pass over them on the presentation.
Very good. All righty. So, but we do have to go to 7B, this 924, 928 Pitt Street.
Well, we have item 6.
Yes.
Oh, excuse me. Yes, indeedy. Pardon me. All right, item 6, appeal to the Commissioner of Staff level COA for fencing at 204 Live Oak.
And so the procedure goes where the staff gives the initial presentation, and that'll be followed by the presentation of the applicant, who has up to 10 minutes, and then followed by unsworn public comment, which is 3 minutes each. Any final statement by the town official, final statement by the applicant, and then the commission at that point can ask questions. Public comment will then close, the commission will deliberate, and then there will be a motion. So just as a reminder.
All righty. So let's proceed.
Presentation. I wanted to give a background. It's 204 Live Oak. It is a historic designated property. The property received a previous COA for wire fencing on July 8th, 2020. If you're looking at the house on the right side of the house, the applicant applied for wire fencing on the left side of the house on 12/23/20 for new fencing. The application included everything that I needed to complete a review, a letter of intent, site plan, and photographs, along with the location of the fence being behind the front porch portion of the house, which you'll see in the site plan. COA was emailed back to applicant on January 4th. The agenda was posted on December 28th and then amended again with the staff report, hyperlinks, correspondence on those following days. The item was on the agenda for the January 11th meeting under staff approvals, and staff received a request for appeal on January 10th. And so this is what was approved on January 8th, 2020. The red circle on the page is where the proposed fencing was approved. And then this is a current picture of the approved fencing from July 8th, 2020. And again, this is on the right side of the property. This was previously approved in 2020. So this is not what they were asking for. This is just background information. This is the site plan. So on the right side of the property, that's where the pictures I just showed you were. On the left side with the circle, that's and the highlight, that's where the applicant asked for new fencing. This was part of her application. This is another part of her application, just a screenshot of her letter. And minor staff, I approved it because of this ordinance section 433 allowed me to approve it because it was on the minor staff list, or sorry, minor work list. And for some reason you can't see the bottom here, approval or denial. The commission secretary in this case of minor work shall not consider vegetative landscaping. So I just looked at the fence based on the design guidelines. So moving on. Again, this is a section from the design guidelines, the approved materials list, and B for both, and the wooden woven fence. So my staff reasoning appeared to meet all applicable design guidelines, number 2 and 10, and applicant provided pictures of the neighboring properties, and then the fence is not a historic fence. In conclusion, the claims raised in the Geoghegan's appeal do not present any evidence that would influence or overturn staff approval on this project, because 204 Live Oak's fence plan meets requirements that staff is charged with reviewing. I did just put in pictures in case anybody wanted some more visual. And that concludes the staff level presentation. The applicant is able to speak now for 10 minutes. And Joanna, you are muted. Just so
okay, we are here now, I think.
All right.
Yes, and Kate, were you able to give the documents that we had provided a couple of months ago to everyone in the pictures?
Yes. And so that's what I added here. It's all hyperlinked and on this presentation. So I've got the email and all the pictures.
Okay, great. And are we able to toggle through those and navigate through those?
I don't think so, but you can just let me know. Just let me know where.
Which picture? Okay.
Okay. Well, thanks for everybody for considering our appeal today. We are the neighbors on the other side of the property line that this fence would affect.
Can you just give your name and address for the record, please? Thank you.
Sure. This is Mark Geoghan, 206 Live Oak Drive, Mount Pleasant. So we are the neighbors on the adjacent property that have a common property line to the fence application in question. And we have multiple reasons why we don't think it should be approved. And we've outlined those in the email that we had sent in with the pictures, but I'll kind of highlight some of them. The first is that there is an existing fence in place. It's not right on the property line, but it's been there for a while. I'm not sure anyone knows whether it's historic or how long it's been there. We've tried to dig up how long, but it's certainly been there for a while. We've been there 11 years, and it was there, we think, before who owned it, the previous owners who had been there previous 10 years. So probably 20 to 30 plus years, white picket fence that's there has been there.
Possibly 50, actually.
Yeah, possibly longer, but the fence is in good condition. It's not rotting. It's aesthetically pleasing and is in more congruent with the surrounding streetscape, both on our property as well as Ms. Daly's has a white picket fence in front of her house. And if you saw that first picture, she has it down halfway on the other property line already. And she's proposing to remove the entire white picket fence and place a wire fence, which is not nearly as aesthetically pleasing or incongruent with the historic nature of the neighborhood. There is a brown section of fence. I'm not sure when, again, that was placed either. That was prior to when we moved in, and it's not very aesthetically pleasing. It is visible, though, however, from Mill Street. And our understanding is the wire fencing is more supposed to be used when for fencing that's not visible from streetscape. So that portion of the fence is visible from Mill Street, and we agree it does not look great, and replacing that with a white picket fence would be a great idea if Ms. Daly would like to replace the fence. There's also additional white picket fence further down the property line, which was in good condition as well. The other ongoing thing is there's currently a drainage problem between the two properties that the town is very aware of and currently is working on a project to help with that. We're working on finding a solution for that, and the project is planned or temporary plan to go right down that fence line. So we don't think changing anything with that fence line at this idea is a good idea until the town has solidified plans and done that work rather than kind of proceeding with a new at this time. And then another point we'd like to make is that the point in our mind of the wire mesh fence is it's supposed to be a backdrop to plant vegetation and plant landscape so that not very aesthetically pleasing wire mesh fence is hidden. From the pictures that were shown earlier, that previous wire mesh fence was placed over a year ago, and there's not a single piece of vegetation been planted. So we're concerned that the same will happen along this property line, not to mention the fact that there's a lot of dense vegetation and probably won't grow landscaping very well either. Another consideration is the reason the fence was probably initially placed is there's several large trees along the property line where she's hoping to move the new fence that could be potentially damaged, as well as a lot of mature landscaping that adds a buffer between the two properties.
Right. So there are, okay, on this picture right here, you can see this is the marsh side of the house. And well, you can see it on this picture too. Actually, Kate, do you mind just staying on that picture with the live oaks that are protected?
This one?
That one right there. There you go. Thank you. Yes. So this brown fence, I wish I had a laser pointer. That would be easier. But this is a brown fence we both agree needs to be taken down. It is not pretty. It's not in keeping with the historic nature of the neighborhood. And it definitely could be taken down. The problem with moving it is you do have some protected trees in the way. So we would just request a town arborist advise on the best way to do that and not allow those trees to be taken down, but just, to be careful of the trees when it is moved. On either side or flanking this brown fence that we agree needs to be taken down are the areas that are white picket. And the white picket fence, again, is in keeping with the rest of the streetscape. And according to the HDPC guidelines, that's what needs to happen, is that the streetscape fencing should match other streetscape fencing. So we've sent some pictures of the rest of the streetscape, our neighbors across the street, our neighbors down the street. Perfect. Yes. We don't have white picket fence. It, as all of the commission probably wouldn't be on this board if you all didn't care about the historical content and the special historic nature of our neighborhood, and that we all have a passion to preserve. So that's all we're asking, is that, I know Kate was new to this job and may not have realized all the implications of just doing the approval without any discussion. But when Mrs. Bailey, our neighbor, submitted the proposal, the site plan just draws a straight line down the property, but our landscape is not conducive to just a straight line. This house has been here since 1855. It is on the National Historic Trust. The trees that are protected can't just have a straight line drawn down them with a ruler. There's a lot of very special landforms that need to be respected when she moves the fence. Now, I don't know if you mind going, Kate, to the picture of the front yard, because we did want to mention that part of the fence too. The picture of the magnolia, if you don't mind bringing that up, because the magnolia tree is at least a half a century year old tree. And then the mature landscaping behind it is very old as well. The fence behind it, we're not sure how old it is, but we know it's been here for at least the past 3 owners, which makes it likely 40 to 50 years old.
And that's the white picket fence is behind that magnolia, behind that big, tall.
So you can't, it's hard to see, but yeah, behind the magnolia is the ligustrum, and behind that is the white fence. She wants to move that fence, take it down, which it's historically appropriate, and she wants to move it, but there's nowhere to move the fence because it would destroy the magnolia. And so we would like to, appeal for that reason as well, that just to leave that fence where it is a nice privacy hedge for both of us, and the magnolia, should not be harmed. And again, the living fence would not be in keeping with the rest of the streetscape. Let's see, other points I was just going to mention.
You have 1:30 left. Sorry, you have 10 minutes and this 1:30.
That's fine. So anyway, just in summary, we just wanted to consider that this is an historic property in the National Historic Trust, and to look to the HDPC guidelines that protect from these kind of changes, that the fence should match the surrounding streetscape, which is white picket, and that's all we're asking, is that that we keep in consistency with that.
Thank you. I think that's all we have.
And this
The only
is,
thing,
sorry, you have 1 more minute.
okay, the only thing we wanted to add was that the wire mesh fence that she put on the other side still at this time has no vegetation on it, and our understanding is you have a certain amount of days to do some planting, and it's been up for over a year. So it is not covered, it's barren and devoid of any vegetation, and we don't think that another wire mesh fence would add, it would detract from the property.
All right, and this is the opportunity for public comment. If anyone would like to call in, to use this number and use this conference ID, we'll just give a little while in case anybody wants to call in.
We do not have anyone waiting in the lobby.
All right. Board members, this is your opportunity to ask some questions. You will be able to comment and deliberate after, but if you have any questions on the applications.
I do have a question, and this is Louisa. On the left-hand side, the white picket fence that she's going to be putting up extends to the area behind her house before the wire fencing begins. Is that not true? I mean, what you're going to see.
Correct. On the side that she has already put up a wire fence that's not on our adjacent line. Correct. The front part of that is white picket and then goes to wire mesh.
And
she's proposing to put wire mesh in the street.
No, as I understand it, what we're looking at now, the white picket and then extension of the unplanted wire fence, that will be the same thing that will be used on the left-hand side. I don't think, from the plans we saw, I do not believe the wire fencing would be extended out to Live Oak Drive. Is that correct?
That is correct. From the, this is the application, this is Live Oak Drive, and then the,
She wants to take the wire mesh fence the whole way down.
So her proposal is to go all the way up to Live Oak Drive and have the wire mesh fence all the way on the property line. To take down the white fence that's there in good shape and do the wire mesh all the way down the property. Again, we think that the front should stay where there is. An additional white picket could go behind there because the fence is not.
And again, the fence on the left is visible from Mill Street. So it's not just a backyard. It's visible from the marsh.
So, and speaking with the applicant, she had specifically mentioned doing it after this, changing it to a wire fence after this post, after the gate. But per her application, that's what she told me on the site visit. But per her application, it's shown to start at the property line here and extend back. And this is the historic part of the house. That's the front porch. And this is the rear portion of the house.
Keith, do you have the
Adjacent
adjacent
house down
on that? Like I think the position of the the 206 is relevant here because of the slanted nature of the street there. So it might be on the side of 204, but it's not on the side of 206.
In other words,
Correct. Yeah, correct.
I believe it might be preferable if she could carry the white picket fence to the rear line of her building before she starts the wire fence. That way it would not be seen from the, visible from the street. But as Dory says, because of the slant of the property, we do have.
Sorry, all of it will be visible from the street. Whether it's Mill Street, whether it's Live Oak, or whether it's Maplewood, it's all visible.
Miss Keegan, this is the opportunity for staff, for the commission to ask questions. So wait until they address.
I have a question. Is there any dispute over where the property line is between the two houses? I noticed when I walked the property the other day, and by the way, thank you for inviting us to walk the property. I noticed
Sure.
there are stakes in there that, yes, as indicated here, that demonstrate that the alleged property line, I don't know who put the stakes up, but it's, 8-10 feet away from where the current fence is.
Yeah, so that, we know that for many, probably over half a century, the fence line has at some point been considered not on the right property line. We don't know when that happened and what survey that changed. You know, we have some documents showing it in a different place, but we agree.
Yeah, there's no real dispute. I
we-
mean, that's on the same survey, that the state property line is the true property line. That's true.
Yeah, it might be off some, but what we're asking is, or we're saying it's fine for her to move it, especially the brown fence. You know, that's fine for her to move it. These are protected trees though, and that's probably how that brown fence ended up in that place in the first place. And then in the front yard, we're asking that she not move that because there's another, the magnolia is protected. And that one is not off by that much. Neither is the one by the pool in the back, but, you know, so we're just asking that, again, that she keep the white picket going, and that, because it can be viewed from every single street, and that she, you know, be cognizant of the fact that several of the trees are protected. So really in the front yard, she doesn't gain much by moving it because she'll be hurting the tree.
Well, as we all know, a property line has two sides. And have you considered putting the kind of fence you want on the property line so that it will be aesthetically what you're seeking, and maybe even reusing some of the existing fencing? And it looks, after looking at the property, like that would provide a visual barrier on her side of the foliage that she wouldn't even need a fence there. And I think you have a pool and things like that that also have to be taken into consideration. I did the same thing a number of years ago, and my fence is actually about 6 feet on my side of the property line with one of my neighbors because of a big live oak.
What do you want to say?
But I mean,
And so
that might be a simple solution. You know,
Yes, and keep in mind, that's a good,
might need to put one at all.
Robert, that's a good point. But keep in mind, this application is for an appeal of my staff level decision. And so what we have to determine here is if you will be upholding my staff level decision or granting the appeal. So
Well,
when asking questions, we need to gear it more towards that, because that's what this whole application is.
Yeah, having
Eagle, if you'd like to step in and
reviewed those items, it looks like you made the appropriate decision. I'm just looking for a way that maybe there would be a more mutually acceptable outcome for both parties.
yeah, I understand.
I mean, I question the staff decision in terms of the living fence, and because I don't think that should be up on the street. And the question I have for you, Kate, is what is the precedent for approving the living fence on like the water side of properties, which are also in the public view? Because this isn't really a backyard.
So, again, I can refer here. This is what she's asking to match. So when I went out for the site visit, she explained that it's not actually going to go all the way up here, that she's keeping the little white picket, there's a gate opening, but this is what was in the actual application. And so, you know, I guess that's neither here nor there. But what I was going off of is looking at what's already there. She sent pictures of fences in the other areas, which is on the application that was sent to you, and in the correspondence, she had some other pictures as well. So that's what I used. And then I looked at items 2 and 10 in the design guidelines. And it was.
But the guidelines, they don't do they clearly dictate it can only be in the backyard, or has that traditionally been at the discretion of this commission?
It says used for side or rear yard fences. So,
Because like typically when we review a house that's on the water, like we view the water side of the house, you know, kind of in the same manner as we view the street side.
mhm.
You know, so that's where I kind of question here, you know, what's visible to the
I don't
public.
believe there's any houses or streets behind it, are there?
No, it's marsh.
Right.
I think this is the best picture to show.
Yeah, but I thought when you went out to the you know, businesses on Shem Creek, I thought you kind of looked back at this.
But you can't really see it. There's a lot of shrubbery. Have you walked the area, Matt? Did you walk the area?
This is
Yeah.
You can't
I visited.
you can't see it from Mill Street.
No. Well, I'd like to recommend what I just said previously, to start the white picket fence at Live Oak and extend it to the rear, as far as the rear of the house before you begin the wire fence.
Whose house though?
To the rear of Miss Daly's, that point where,
Yeah, but I'm saying the houses kind of step there along the street, so that might not get you to the backyard of 206. I don't know.
Mac, can you jump on here and
He's asking.
explain?
He's asking. You need to say, yes, it does.
Sorry, I
If
can't.
you could mute it. Mac, if you could jump on here and explain what kind of motion they're needing to make and what they're able to.
Yeah, so a motion could be made to amend the decision so that it starts at Louisa at Live Oak, did you say? And then rearward towards the back left corner of the Daly's property.
correct.
That would be an appropriate motion.
Say that again. It sounds like you're saying it could go all the way up to Live Oak.
No, well, Louisa is proposing that, similar to what Catherine just mentioned, how when she went on the site visit, that the Dalys would want the wire fence to, I forget the photo that had that post, Catherine, and then extend there and then rearward to the back left corner of the property, correct?
But could we designate it though to be not in the front yard of the adjacent property as well?
It wouldn't be.
Right. So if you go to
The gate.
It would be if it was at the gate.
That gate's only about 8 feet into the property. You can see our house back there. That,
Mr. and Mrs. Geegan, I'm sorry, they're in the middle of discussion.
This is
I
why
think-
I
You'll
recommended,
have, you'll have an opportunity to rebuttal after they're finished with their discussion.
this is
Okay, I
why,
thought they were asking us.
excuse me, this is why I've recommended that the white picket fence go from Live Oak Drive. Let's not confuse Live Oak Drive with the Live Oak tree that's also in the discussion. The white picket fence would begin at Live Oak Drive and extend down the property line, stopping at the back corner, left corner of Miss Daly before the living fence begins.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I don't know if that gets you past the front of the adjacent house or not. Because I think it'd kind of be wrong to put living fence in the neighbor's front yard. Do you understand what I'm saying?
With enough shrubbery, the whole point of having a living fence is to have shrubbery.
Yeah, but we don't dictate that, and people don't always do it.
Exactly.
So that's why I'm saying we should force it to be in the front yard of the neighbor's house as well, so that, they don't have to have living fence in their front yard.
Well, you're assuming it should be a white picket fence from the Live Oak Drive the whole way to the rear of the property?
No, the neighbor's house, 206, the front of that house isn't aligned with the front of 204. We can't see it on that diagram there because the house isn't drawn. So we don't know where that occurs unless, I visited the site, but I don't have it, I don't have a photographic memory.
Well, may I repeat what I just said? In other words, you think it should be white picket from start to finish, from Live Oak Drive the whole way down to the back of Mrs. Daly's property?
No, I'm saying that it should be picket fence until you get to the front of the neighbor's house.
Is that the way it currently is? Is the current state of the fence in front of your property acceptable to you? I am asking them a direct question this time.
This is where their white picket fence goes across their side yard, and then it has that brown part of the fence, and then the white picket fence again. And then this is better shown. So that's their white picket fence on their side yard, and then that's the brown fence, and then it goes back to white picket fence.
Well, so you're unhappy with the way it is now. If she were to start the live fence at the front now where the picket fence is, you would not find that acceptable?
There's already a white picket fence in the front yard also that's in a good position that can't really be moved very much because of the magnolia. So we're asking to keep that white picket fence, and where the brown fence is, put white picket there, connecting the two sections of white picket. So we've got white picket in the back, we got white picket in the front, and then we got brown in the middle. All we're saying is, why don't you just keep it consistent, keep it historic, and where the brown fence is, take that down, move it over if you want to, but don't hurt the live oak. Keep the white picket fence, connect the white pickets in the front and the back. And then it's all the same and historically accurate. And it is visible from Mill Street. So we were having some questions about that. It definitely is visible from everywhere.
Once again, I think you would be better off putting the fence up that you want on your property. That solves everything.
But, I think we have to make a motion about what's on the table, though.
So we're not ready for a motion, Corey. There's still
No.
staff rebuttal and then applicant rebuttal. This section was just for questions. And then after those two rebuttals, then you have your chance for comments and deliberation and to make a motion.
Gotcha.
Kate, would we entertain any public comment on the appeal?
Yes, we did. We waited for public comment.
Okay, just wanted to make sure that we'd done that. Okay, thanks.
We had waited for public comment. And just let me know if you are finished with your questions. I can.
I think we're ready for staff.
No, I have a comment, if y'all don't mind. Then in other words, all we really need to do, since that brown woven fence is going to come down because it's unsightly and rotten, all we have to do is have the two picket fences that are up joined with white picket fence and deny living fence on that side altogether.
Was that a question?
I made a statement hoping for one of the gentlemen would join in with a.
Actually, I think we can do that according to the guidelines. I don't think we can do that I'll have staff give their rebuttal, which I'm sure will refer to the guidelines.
I think the guidelines are unclear, though, about where the living fence has been used and approved. And I think that's where our discretion comes in.
Well, we have the discretion to change it.
Gotcha.
Number
Mac, I have a point of order question. This is
Yes.
Lynette. Would, so the appeal is for appealing the staff decision. So
Correct.
the board would also need to add in their motion a justification as to whether they're upholding staff's decision or if they are not, correct?
That's correct. So if the commission upholds staff's decision, there would need to be a finding of why, and alternatively, if the commission overturns staff's decision, there would also need to be rationale as to why.
Excuse me, is there any way we can ask for a representation of the plans with a full picket fence from Live Oak Drive to the rear of the property between the two homes?
I'm not sure whether or not that would be appropriate, because the application, I think that would require the applicant to want to submit a new application with all white picket fence, correct?
Yes, she cannot, can she amend her application?
She could, but I believe that would have to come from the applicant. If the applicant wanted to amend the application for it to only be white picket fence rather than the wire fence.
Is there any way we can table the entire project until application in 204 has been allowed to amend her presentation?
She has not made any
Yeah.
suggestion that she wants to change her application. We can't force her to change her application.
Okay.
Correct, Mac?
Yes, that's correct. So the issue for the commission to decide on here is whether or not staff approval of the COA application was proper or not.
Then I would suggest, since we have so many decisions involving this, we decide that the staff approval was not appropriate.
Yeah, but we got to give the staff, we got to work through the process on the screen though.
What do you mean?
The
So
staff's
we're
got
at
to
staff rebuttal right now, so staff would have an opportunity to make their final comments. Following their final comments, then the applicant would also have a chance for their final comments. Then the board could deliberate as far as what type of motion you felt was appropriate, and then make that motion.
And could staff please indicate where this starts? I'm unclear as to where the fence starts relative to the sides of both houses. And, you know, that would be a very helpful piece of information.
Well,
It hasn't been clear to
the
me.
current application shows the fence all the way out, so we can kick it back just based on that, I think.
Well, all the way out to the existing fence?
Yeah, they're showing the living fence all the way out to Live Oak, which shouldn't have been approved.
I
So,
think it goes all the way out to the picket fence, doesn't it? Not to the Live Oak, but to the picket fence that extends across.
yeah, that's what we've been discussing, but that's not what the application shows.
Well, I mean,
And that's
I-
what
I
we're
see where
debating
the
as
fence line
application.
is on my phone, looking at the pictures. And it leaves about 10 feet of picket fence to the left. And I don't know what else is over there. But I do know there's picket fence going forward to the front of the house.
Kate, may we have a blow up of the site plan that has the red circle on it?
Yes, and
A full
Corey,
screen? There we go.
just to answer your question, woven fences are allowed on the side and rear yards.
Yeah, but I think there's always a discussion about where the side, where the side yard starts. Like you can't have a tall fence in your front yard, and that usually means from the front of your house out. But we have an odd situation here because the street's at an angle.
Let me
But
know when
that-
you're ready for,
So this, just to be clear, the red circled area, that's the whole length of the fence between the two properties that they've proposed to be living fence.
Correct.
Now, is that dotted line that extends to the left the fence line?
I
Where
think
it
that's
ends
the right of way for Live Oak Drive.
this right here,
Yes.
that's another property line. So their property line goes like this and then back this way.
I think
Okay,
he's saying
and
the
where's the
dotted
fence?
line to the left. That's the front of the neighbor's yard.
This,
So is that line extending to the left from the bottom of the green thing a fence line?
no, I think that might be an easement.
And there's
No,
tall
one below
shrubbery.
that.
There's shrubbery there.
I'm sorry. I think that's an easement though.
Typically, the dotted line is typically an easement line.
Well, where's the
Yeah, it's hard to
neighbor's
read.
property line? Where's the neighbor's front property line on this?
Oh, well, if we're allowed to speak, we can probably clarify a little bit of it.
Yeah, that was a question.
Okay, so on the, the green is where she's proposing the new fence, and that does come all the way out to Live Oak on the proposal, and then all the way to the back of the property line. The current white picket fence in the front part that Mr. Barber's referring to, our front of our yard, extends down kind of beyond her house where she's got back porch, is probably another 5 or 8 feet, and then turns into that brown fence. So it's maybe the first, I'd say 40% of that green line is white picket fence. There is it's hard to see because it's not blown up, but where she's got the green highlighted, that is the property line. And then there's a faint dotted line that is the existing fence that, again, she wants to move over to the property line.
But again, there are trees in the way, protected trees.
So is the slanted dotted line your front property line?
Over to the left is our property. Yeah, straight out to the left of that line is our property line. And then the green highlighted is going straight down the common property line between the two properties.
So,
But once again, the green line is the property line, not the existing fence line,
Correct.
which is the dotted line, correct?
The dotted line, it's a faint dotted line.
Can you see my
kind of is
mouse?
a pie shape.
Right,
It's kind of pie shaped.
right.
Yeah.
And that's my point, is you can do whatever you want on your land, but you can't do it on other people's land or tell them what to do on their land. So that's a real issue here, I think.
hey, you can't do anything you
Which is
want.
why it would probably be great for you guys to kind of take the lead on it.
Well, go ahead, Bob. Well, as I understand it, the white picket fence will begin at Live Oak Drive, take that slant down to a point where the green circle is, and go down to the rear of Ms. Daly's property. Then the living fence will begin, and as there is no guideline against a living fence, I believe that may have made a correct approval.
Guidelines, it should match the streetscape.
Are you, just let me know when you're ready for staff rebuttal.
Take
And
it
then-
away, Kate.
Okay. So just to address a couple things, the trees are not in your purview. So that is actually done on the staff level. And I have already worked with the applicant and with our town arborist on where the post should go and the exact spacing, how far apart the wood posts are allowed to go in whether it's going to be like how it's going to be dug, and all of that. So that's been worked through at a staff level, but it's not under your purview. So trees are not under your purview. Drainage is also not under your purview, and vegetation. So vegetation, it's specifically stated in the ordinance that you shall not consider it. And so I had that highlighted here. And again, back to her letter, she was looking to basically complete what she's already done on the right-hand side of the property, and it would still have white picket fence a little bit in the front per our discussion, not per this. I mean, this shows the green highlighted going all the way back to the property line. You cannot put fence back here. That's in the marsh. So she can't put fence back there without OCRM. And then here we have the actual applicable guidelines that I used. And she sent pictures that were part of the application that was shown to y'all. Oops. And so, and this is where it says it's allowed in the side and rear. This is where it says it's allowed for both historic and non-historic properties. And so using all of the guidelines, I granted approval. And again, she's thinking past here for the woven fence, and she is wanting to complete a project that she started. And I believe that's really all I have. And yeah, no, fine. That's all I have. And now it's time for the applicant rebuttal.
Can you please put the photo back up that shows the fence, the white picket fence that you said where she was planning on putting it to? I believe it's that first picture. So that white gate is only about maybe 10 feet from the property line. So it's extremely visible. The one on the other side that she claims to be matching goes all the way down pretty much where you can see the white picket fence in that picture. So she's looking at, and you can see our house is sets way back. So like Mr. Barber said, this is going to go straight in the middle of right by that magnolia. You can see the magnolia is a good ways, a long ways back from there. So this is greatly going to affect the way it's visible both from the street and from our house. Again, we're fine if she wants to move it closer, if she wants to do stuff in the back, but this is very visible and is going to affect one of the 8 houses on the historic National Trust in the Old Village, which is what this commission is supposed to protect.
And again, this does match the request. What we're asking is that she just continue the white picket, take down the brown, move it over. She was
Lost audio.
Ms.
to just
Gagan,
have.
there you go. It's there. We go.
Oh, okay. Sorry. So anyway, so again, we're just asking to connect the front white picket fence with the backyard white picket fence with white picket instead of living, because her other living fence, she never put vegetation. And that was the original intent of the wire fences that were placed on the approval list. But again, what it says right here in the HGPC guidelines, it says look to the streetscape on your block to determine what would be harmonious with architecture. And so what would be harmonious is white picket. That's what we're asking you all to do. And her current application does not say white picket.
Her current application has it going down the entire property line. So what she said in the meeting is different from what she applied for. She applied for a living fence, wire fence going down the whole property line.
So
that's
are
why.
you saying that I'm still having trouble with the whole placement of the fence thing. You're
Mr.
okay with
Mr.
her putting
Crossland,
it on the
Mr.
property line,
Crossland,
right?
Mr. Crossland, if you could
Yes.
just hold for just one moment.
Well, right, because of Magnolia.
But she can
I'm
get
sorry,
around it.
what was your question again?
He's not, you don't have, it's not a question time. This is your last final comments and your rebuttal.
I was just
Okay.
saying,
You would not
So-
be able to ask a
But we're-
question right now.
We are okay with white picket fence if it keeps the trees and good. If he wants to put white picket fence, basically the same location where it is, if it wants to move it over 3 feet, if she would like to do that, then that's fine. If she wants to get it close to the property line. But we think that the white picket fence should at least be, like Mr. Barber said, in our front yard. We really feel like it should go all the way to the back because it's in keeping with the neighborhood and it is visible from the other side.
And in the front yard, what we're saying is there's not much room to move it because of Magnolia. So it's already in a good place and it's already there and appropriate.
but really, this is a property line issue.
No. No,
But it's also an
Mr.
aesthetic
Crossland?
issue. So
it's an
Mr.
aesthetic.
Crossland, Mr. Crossland, this is their rebuttal. You can't ask a question right now.
So I guess what you're saying, yes, if we want to put a white picket fence, if she would like to move it 2 feet over and put it on the property line, we don't have any problem with that. And we've said that multiple
Where the
times.
brown fence is, yes. Where the
We're
brown
not-
fence is.
We're not-
But again, I think it would help Mr. Crossland to maybe see it in person. It's hard to describe unless you come back.
I have walked it and taken pictures of it, and that's why I'm a little curious.
You've been in our yard. I didn't,
Wrong fence
well,
on-
it's still,
Mr. Crossland, please don't interrupt their rebuttal. They have to finish their final comments, then the board can deliberate.
Okay, I think that's all of our comments.
yes, we're just asking to look to the HGBC guidelines that say to look to the rest of the streetscape. The rest of the streetscape is white picket. So let's just keep in keeping with the historic content of the neighborhood and do white picket. So.
I
Does
would,
that conclude your rebuttal?
Joanna, y'all finished? Then I would suggest that we.
Ms. Montgomery, if you can go ahead and close the public comment period, and then you guys can go ahead and discuss it.
Alrighty, I'd like to close the public comment and go back to the discussion of the white picket fence as opposed to the living fence on the left-hand side of the property of 204 Live Oak Drive. I would imagine the best thing to do at this point is to overturn the staff approval, which allows for a living fence which can be seen.
So what you have to give a design guideline or a ordinance that I did not apply correctly. Right, Mac? If you could jump in.
Yeah.
give
I think
them
we
some
should.
guidance.
It would, sorry, go ahead, Mac. yes, no, it would be proper just in case there is an appeal from the applicant that goes to the circuit court to have a rationale as to anchor why the commission would be overturning the staff decision.
Do you have those numbers handy?
I
The
think
152.6, that sort of thing?
I think the one that discusses, side and rear yard, I think that's where, we have, a misuse of that provision. If anyone else agrees.
28, item 3.
Because I don't think that the living fence should be approved for, the portion of that fence that is the front yard of the neighbor's house.
High-quality woven wire, if used as a support for landscape elements, is appropriate if used for side or rear fences. Not appropriate along street fronts, which I don't know if we really actually established that. Not
Well,
in my mind, we haven't. I mean, I'm unclear about that. I was trying to ask about that.
Well, the application shows the living fence come all the way up to Live Oak. So in that respect, I feel like that's incorrect. And if they want to resubmit it, you know, adhering to the, you know, keeping it behind, you know, the fronts of both houses, then I think that would meet the guidelines. But I do not believe that like living fence coming out the Live Oak, you meet the intent of that guideline you just read.
Yeah, that's the part I'm unclear on, is if it actually is planned to be like that. Or if it just want to come up and get into the existing fence.
Say that again, Robert?
See, that's what I'm not sure about, is if it, the property line, if you look at it, there's about 10 feet of fence of going down the length of Live Oak. And, you know, it was my impression that this fence was only going to come up and dead end into that existing fence, not to go beyond it.
Well, I don't know if, I mean, Kate, do I misunderstand the the original application?
No, like I said, she just highlighted the entire section, but on site, that's when she explained where she was going to start the live fence and move it, or yeah, live fence and move it back.
Yeah,
She
we
did
gotta
not,
have-
this
we
is
gotta
not
have it ready.
totally,
See,
I mean, this
Corey,
is
I'm
what was in the
showing you right
application.
here I'm showing you the picture of this, looking towards Live Oak. And you can see the orange stakes. There's still quite a bit of picket fence on the left side, which would be the applicant's side. The right side is 206. But maybe I can't hold it well enough. But
Yeah,
anyhow,
no,
I mean,
I'm
if you look at where the
saying
orange stakes are, you can see that there is
Yeah.
about 8 feet of
but where the property line isn't the
moving
question.
horizontally along the same parallel as Live Oak.
It wasn't the greatest picture.
I'm sorry. Let me try again.
I mean, I visited the site and I saw it. You know, it wasn't this morning or anything. But to me, the question isn't where the property line is. That's not our deal.
But that's always a question. You can do anything you want to on your property, but you can't do anything you want on somebody else's property or force them to do it.
No, you can't do anything you want. You got to meet the district's guidelines.
Right, which this seems to quite clearly.
So you think the living fence could come all the way up to Live Oak and that would meet the
No,
guideline?
to come up all the way to the existing fence, which is where I interpreted it would come to.
But what does the actual staff approval approve? It sounded to me like it approves the living fence all the way up the whole side of the property.
Well,
No.
it sounded to me like it was going to be like the other side. Maybe Kate can clarify this for us, because I'm confused on it. I mean, I'm not really sure.
Kate has clarified this before, since we started talking about this, that
She said that verbally on site, something was discussed, but what is on paper? What is the actual thing that we're agreeing with or disagreeing with?
Exactly.
And so this is the letter that she gave, and then this is the site plan she provided. So this is exactly what's in the application.
The original application for 204, not the appeal, right?
Yes, this is part of the original application. This was part of her original application, and this was her letter. And then she had included pictures, but I didn't add the pictures into my presentation.
But to me, based on the wording that you have on screen right there, she's proposing to do the whole length of the property line that she highlighted.
Correct.
In the living fence. And that's
Mrs.
what I'm
Egan,
saying.
this is not the time. You cannot make comments during this time.
And that's what I'm saying, that the provision wasn't applied in terms of the living fence being in side and rear yards.
That's exactly what was in the application. This is what I had approved.
I believe that's misleading because it makes us think that what is in the red oval and the green line is all living fence, and that is not a fact. The picket fence goes from Live Oak Drive down that left slant to the rear point of Miss Daly's home before the living fence begins. Is
How
that
do you know that, Louisa?
well? This is what Allison Daly told Kate or showed Kate.
Yes, but I'm only presenting what was in the application. This is what she provided in the application. And this is what was given for the public to see, this actual application. On site is when she explained to me that the fence would start after this little gate, but that is not what was approved in the application. That was part of the on-site visit. This is what was in the application, and this is what I gave the COA to. And so it doesn't take into account, you know, I mean, it just shows from one end of the property line to the other. That was what was in the application.
Well, I think
that's why I think we can't approve it the way it's on paper.
I believe you're right, Corey.
If she wants to come back and amend it, then that's a different story. So, I mean, my viewpoint is that the staff approval was inappropriate because it approved living fence in the side yard.
But that is allowed. So what you would.
I mean, in the front yard.
Front yard, yeah, that's what you, yes, in the front yard.
So
And I
you
think
think this comes past the existing picket fence of 204 and 206, which is contiguous.
Sorry, Robert, say it again.
I still don't know if they're proposed to come beyond the existing picket fence that goes down both in front of 204 and 206.
I think on paper they are.
Yeah. I don't think so.
On paper, the picket fence goes to the tail end of Ms. Daly's house, the far left corner. Is that specifically stipulated in the original application?
I don't know.
This is what was specifically stipulated in the original application, just what I've shown.
A little bit. Is there any way you can make that bigger? I don't know.
She highlighted the whole length of her property. Her property's got an odd shape because the front corner is clipped by live oak.
Right, we all understand that, but our concern here is how far back the white picket fence will go from Live Oak Drive to the far left corner.
Yeah. And I don't think it's clear.
Just a point of clarification, what you would be considering here is whether or not this, I think what I'm understanding is you're considering if this would be side or front yard, because in the design guidelines, side yard is approved and so is rear yard. So to be able to give reasoning, you'd have to say that it was not part of the side or rear yard. So just a point of clarification.
But this is side yard, most obviously.
No, it's not though for the neighboring property.
So that's why I approved it, because I saw it as the side yard. So that's where you need to give the reasoning, which is what Corey is saying, for the front yard. And again, if you need to be saying this and not me, please jump in.
I will just say, for the record, if the commission finds that the record is insufficient for review, there could be a motion brought that the record is insufficient for review, and then this could be set for a rehearing with a further determination as to whether or not this is side or front yard, or where exactly what the applicant has applied to do. If the commission finds that it's unclear where the white picket fence is to meet the wire fence.
I believe that is what we need to do. I really do. Thank you, Mac. I believe with insufficient evidence, we need to set this aside for a further hearing with clarification of side yard as opposed to rear yard, as opposed to front yard, as opposed to at what point the picket fence will end and the living will begin.
I'll second that.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's the only thing that's made sense since we started talking
Are
about
you
this.
gonna vote on it? Are
Montgomery, I
you,
need you to restate that motion because I was not aware you were in the middle of making a motion.
okay. I move that due to insufficient evidence, we set the, hearing.
Louisa, just as a point of clarification, so the motion would be that you're determining that the record is insufficient for review based on the fact that it's unclear where the wire fence would be actually starting towards the front of the property and then as opposed to the white picket fence.
I'm trying to remember all that, but based on
We
insufficient,
should also note that we also don't have.
Corey, she's in the middle of a motion. Hang on.
based on insufficient evidence, I move that based on insufficient evidence pertaining to side yard, rear yard, picket fence, start and ending of living fence, that this be set aside for future review.
Mac, would that be considered a continuance or is that more of a deferral?
So what procedurally, what would be happening is that the commission would be finding that the record is insufficient for review. And
Yes.
this would be remanded back to Catherine. And there would be a rehearing on this matter. Depending on that determination.
That motion I made was not seconded and not ready for discussion.
Second.
Is there any discussion?
Can we request that the neighboring house, be located on this so we can determine what is front and side?
Excellent suggestion. A site plan include the the situation of the home at 206 as relates to the site plan for 204.
Corey, is that an amendment? Is that an amendment to the motion?
Yes.
I actually don't think we.
And
can
we
do
need a
that.
second for that amendment?
I'll second it. Any more discussion? If not, let's vote in favor of,
Ms. Montgomery, you need to vote on the amendment to provide the site plan, including the adjacent properties first, and then you would make a motion on the main, vote on the main motion.
all right, I move that we,
Nope.
wait,
Just need to call for a vote for the amendment.
I call for a vote on the amendment that shows site plan of 206 as well as 204.
Aye.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That does not
Just
require.
vote.
I actually don't
Aye.
think that can be done, but that's okay. I'm a nay because I just don't
Alrighty.
think that's a
So
real.
let's vote on the whole. We're gonna
Okay,
vote-
let me do a roll call, please. So this is a vote on the amendment to the motion to provide a site plan that includes the adjacent properties.
Just 206.
Okay, excuse me, okay, sorry.
But that's not required by the submission.
Mr.
requirements.
Hold on, please. Ms. Montgomery, are you amenable to that clarification on the motion?
I'm amenable to the clarification of the amendment.
Thank you. All right, so voting on the amendment to provide the site plan including 206 Live Oak property lines. And we have Mr. Barber.
It's not, no, not the property line where the house is.
It's the site plan of the dwelling.
So are you asking for a survey?
Is there not?
We need
site-
information.
Help us here, please.
A site plan is the property with the footprint of the house on the property. That is a site plan.
Right, but can you do it? Can you require it for adjacent site houses?
The
That's
motion is the amendment is to provide a site plan, including 206 Live Oak.
Yes, I think this would be sufficient.
But I'm just asking our attorney if that's something that you can actually do.
To require the
Site plan?
staff to provide the site plan of
I thought we
206.
were, I thought we were talking about requiring the submitter to include adjacent houses, which I think is what they're asking.
No, we're
Who would
asking the town.
Who would do the plan?
I can't produce a site plan. I'm not a registered, licensed landscape
That's my point.
surveyor.
That's my point. Who are we asking to do this?
I thought the
Yeah.
town has the records of this sort of thing. When I applied for a whole house generator, I had to have a site plan of my property, the property lines, and the placement of the house with footage on either side from the property line. So there should be in the town records a site plan of 206 showing the position of the dwelling.
And I think a surveyor could approximate it, Robert, without having to go on the neighbor's property.
Yeah, I'm just asking who pays for it.
It should already be in town records. It should
But
be.
it might not be. A lot of our records were destroyed during Hugo.
So
Um,
because
Just
it's
as
being
an
referred
example,
back,
Robert.
because it's being remanded back to staff would be responsible for providing the site plan if that amendment is approved.
Well,
Correct,
the
Matt?
amendments, excuse me, the amendment's hanging fire, and I thought we had voted on it already.
We've not voted on the amendment yet. I'm waiting to make a roll call vote.
All righty, but would you do that, please, ma'am?
I certainly would love to. Mr. Barber,
In
this
favor,
is just on the amendment.
in favor.
Thank you. Mr. Gallagher,
I would say I'm in favor.
Mr. Crossland,
No, because I don't know where you're going to get it, who's going to pay for it.
That's not your problem.
Ms. Montgomery.
Yes.
Motion passes on the amendment 3-1. Ms. Montgomery, would you like a roll call vote on the amended motion?
I would like a roll call vote on a rereading of the amended motion, please, first.
The motion is to remand back to staff for clarification I'm sorry, let me start over. I'm sorry. I was trying to make it sound better and that's not working. It was determined that the record is not sufficient for review. It is not clear where the live fence starts and white picket fence starts and ends. Therefore, the appeals to be remanded back to staff for clarification with an amendment to provide the site plan, including 206 Live Oak.
Correct.
Roll call vote. Mr. Crossland,
Yes,
Mr. Gallagher,
Yes.
Mr. Barber,
Yes.
Ms. Montgomery,
Yes.
all in favor, unanimous.
So is this deferred or is it a continuance? What is that?
This must be set for rehearing within 60 days.
Ms. Montgomery, if you'd like to continue with the agenda?
I would like to continue with the next item, which is item 9, discussion on historic district expansion.
There's
Ms. Montgomery, I
actually
think we
one
have
more.
actual item.
There's a preliminary.
924, 928.
Oh, golly, yeah, I turned my page too soon, excuse me. 924, 928, applicants seeking preliminary review for demolition and new construction. We have seen the plans.
So the applicable ordinances listed below. This is again for demolition and to rebuild a new home, and they had cited the economically rehabilitated on the site, and then that the new development is more compatible, and there is no applicable design guidelines because no design was submitted. And again, this is preliminary review, so it's my comments. This property was recommended for historic designation, so before it's approved for demolition, it should be looked at again and reconsidered for its historic designation before moving on. And then looking at the pictures and the site plan, it looks like the proposed house is much larger than the two houses in front. And then the no architectural plans, so we cannot say that the new design would fit better. But the plans did seem to meet the BAR and impervious surface, and they are asking for a relief on the setbacks because it's a unusual lot. And so this is the picture looking at what we have now. Proposed the one-story frame here. And then to the rear, this is what's there right now, again. And then moving over to what's proposed. This is the site plan here. And that was really all that was given. That concludes the staff comments, and now is the time that the board can give its comments. But again, there will be no deliberation because it's preliminary, so it's just for comments. And now is, I've concluded my presentation. Now is the time for any public comments, if anybody wants to call in. Or if the applicant is.
Yeah, this is Phil Clark with Clark Design Group.
The applicant.
Mr. Clark, hold on just one moment.
Okay,
we do not have anyone waiting in the lobby, so we can then go forward if you're ready.
Okay, thank you. This is Phil Clark with Clark Design Group on behalf of the applicant. What we have here is a home that is 1940s, sits about 6 feet below even the new flood zone. And it sits on the property in such a way that there is no vehicular access available onto the property without crossing one of the other properties that are, that outside of the easement that's been given. So we have two options in front of you. Option A would be to demo the existing structure. So we're requesting that. And then option B would be if it is determined that this structure should not be demoed or should be called out as historic, then we would ask to relocate it on the property to another location, and then we would do an addition to it and would use the historic or non-historic, the existing structure, as part of our new design. So the structure is not in great shape. It is currently being lived in, so it is habitable right now, but it is not, there's not necessarily a historic quality to it as a structure, although it is an older structure. So we're coming to you to get guidance from the board as to either demoing the structure or keeping it and relocating it. And so that's why we just kind of provided a site plan and just a general idea of what we're thinking. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. Normally, we do not even discuss demolition without, honest to gosh, architectural plans in hand.
Okay.
I mean, that's written in concrete. So what would you prefer that we do?
Okay, and I apologize. I thought I'd spoken with Kate about this, whether we just provide site plans, and so that's what we did.
Right.
Yeah, and so there, I think there must have been a misunderstanding on our part as to what they required.
Well,
I think. Go ahead.
Excuse me, Mr. Clark, would you like us to table this until you come back with the new idea of moving the building over instead of having two sets of plans to look at? And then when you come back with your total reconsidered architectural drawings, then you can ask for a demo.
Okay. I think that, as I understood it before, this structure had been requested to be deemed historic, thus could not be demoed, but that was never voted upon. So should that be discussed at this time as to whether it would even be considered a historic structure or not? Is that?
Well,
I
Catherine,
recall we decided it was not going to be designated historic. The land is historic, but the building itself was not used as a meeting house or something designated for African Americans to have church in, hold services. So the house was never itself designated as an historic building.
Okay.
Catherine, can you confirm that that was our recommendation for the town?
The town's recommendation was for historic designation. The commission did not recommend it to be designated for historic designation. So it did not go to town council as a recommendation.
Gotcha.
So it's not going to be considered historic.
But
No, not by town council. This is a recommendation. These are preliminary staff comments. Initial thoughts on this application, that since it was requested to be designated, that you relook at that before deciding whether or not to allow demolition.
And when are we supposed to be doing that?
If they apply for demolition, then that's when I would recommend looking at it again for historic designation. But again, that's up to you guys.
I think Kate's just saying that anytime something meets any of those requirements in that big long list, before anything's done to it, we have to weigh in on that historic part of it. And I think the point of this is just for him to get some initial feedback from us. You know, my inclination would be, you know, if you could move it and save it, that would be better than demolishing it. But, you know, it's just one of the commission members' thoughts. And then in terms of setbacks, you know, trying to adhere as much as you can without violating setbacks is always preferred.
I see this property has not changed hands. It's been in the that's family since 1900. Is this a spec house?
It's not currently. It has not currently been designated to be a spec project. The owner, someone who's, and you brought up a good point. This house where my client is under contract to purchase it as a personal home. And we just didn't know. I mean, when we talked to Kate about this project, she had mentioned that the staff had recommended historic. The board, some voted for historic, some voted for not historic. So before we moved forward, we needed to know where the board was with this. So that's why we brought it as we did to get direction on that. So
it's a contingent sale then.
It is. Well, it's contingent on getting direction from the board, so we know what we can do on the property. If the board says that, when we talked to Kate about historic, she said typically historic structures are not even allowed to be moved. So if for some reason this was deemed historic and not allowed to be moved, then of course the lot's almost unusable in its current configuration.
What is it about?
I thought
2.5 acre something like that?
It's actually not that big. It's only 100 feet wide, 100 feet deep. So it's not a large property at all.
Slightly under a quarter of an acre.
Yes.
I thought there was language in either the zoning code or the guidelines that did talk about like moving a historic structure was fine.
Yes, just a point of clarification. There is something in the design guidelines that says you should keep a historic building in its original location, but again, this is not designated. Like you said, I just brought it up to be thought of just as a point for discussion.
I mean, I guess my view is that like moving it would be fine because you're allowed to elevate them to meet current flood. So,
Well, there is also the issue of massing. I mean, as I recollect, this is like a proposed 4,200 square foot first floor. Maybe I'm not remembering it exactly, but it's big.
yeah, and that's what, you wouldn't want a 3-story building behind these 2 1-story buildings.
Yeah, and the proposed height of the first floor is 15 feet. So you'd have 15 feet to the first floor, then you'd have a second floor, and it's covering almost the entire piece of property. Even requiring, setback adjustments. So, that's just my feeling is it might be a little overwhelming for the property.
It would tower over those 2 smaller houses that do front on Pitt Street.
And the 2 houses in front are designated historic, as I remember.
I believe you're correct.
This is Phil Clark. Are we still in my time and they're asking questions, or should I make comments later?
Oh, go ahead, Bill.
Sorry, this is the applicant's time. I'm so sorry. This is the applicant's time to present, and then once the applicant is finished presenting, we'll be able to have public comment and final statement from the town official, final statement from the applicant, and then the commission can continue with their questions. I'm so sorry about that.
Okay, yeah. So the question as to raising it based on the flood level when this was submitted was an AE 14, I believe. As of January 29th, of course, it has switched to AE 11 with a 2-foot freeboard. The dirt is currently sitting between 5 and 6 on the existing dirt. So we would need to raise it to 13 feet to the bottom of the framing. And if that's existing 5 or 6, then of course that's probably about an 8-foot tall crawl space, 8-foot tall raised home. The 2 front structures, of course, if those are rehabilitated at any time to current, more than 50%, then they have to be brought up to code as well. So even the 2 front structures will be lifted if they get brought up to those codes to that same height, maybe not quite as high because their existing dirt's a little bit higher than we are on this back piece of property. The square footage of the first floor here is shown is 3,179 square feet. It does not have to be that big. It's big. Well, that's heated then plus porches. We were simply looking at the lot and trying to see how we could use the footprint of the existing structure as part of the overall design is all we were looking at. But again, we didn't want to go too far without knowing the board's opinion on the existing structure. If the board deems it not historic and would allow a demolition of this existing structure, then we would put together a plan that would go that direction. If the board calls this a historic structure and would allow us to move it, then we would have to decide the best way to use it. So I don't know if it would necessarily tower over the front ones once the front ones are lifted up at some time, and it sits pretty far back. So,
but we don't have any inkling as to when those 2 small houses are going to be lifted up. They may never be lifted up.
Correct.
Yeah, I think
I
I
mean,
think historic structures actually aren't required to be lifted. I thought that was one of the like exemptions they get.
For flood
uh,
purposes, you can take, for instance, the home on the corner of Bank and Pitt that has been lifted up from the air as we speak, and it was deemed an historic house.
No, you're allowed to, but you're not required to.
yeah, there certainly would be a flood zone difference. I mean, flood cost difference if you if you didn't. Now, I will tell you that my client who intends on living in the rear one is under contract for the front one as well, for 926, of which he would own that one as well, and we would be rehabilitating that one and bringing it up to current codes as well. So 926 we will be working on and bringing to you sometime soon.
Is
as
that
a
left or the
structure.
right?
To the right, yes, sir. To the right.
Okay, gotcha. There
That
you
one, yes, sir. Yes.
see it.
Keith,
So we will be rehabilitating and adding on to that one. And as I understand it, plans are being worked on for the one to the left currently. However, we're not part of that project.
Hey, Keith, I had a question. There was a property last year that came in. It was like this, but different. It was a front and a rear lot that were separate. And I thought that like the town had required them to join the two properties because it was rectifying a nonconformity. Is that come into play here?
Is the applicant finished with his presentation?
I am. We're done. Our response to the comment is that we do not want to join the two structures. And I believe from a lot size standpoint, they are both conforming. But we will not be joining the two lots together to form one large lot. We just need to know whether we could either demo or move the rear lot structure so that that lot can actually be accessed. But yes, this concludes my presentation, and I'll be here for questions. Thank you.
So, Catherine, am I misremembering something?
So if the lots are non-conforming and the owner owns both of the lots, then yes, I believe that is part of our zoning code or part of the LDRs that says that you'd have to combine them and make them or bring them into conformity if you own both lots. But it sounds like that's not the case here. He's saying that both of the lots are in conformity, and yeah, I don't know about that. I haven't looked into it.
Yeah, I would suspect that the front lot potentially would be non-conforming, but that would have to be reviewed, I guess.
I believe the one you're thinking of, Corey, was on Bennett Street, where Mary Street dead ends into Bennett.
No, the one on Pitt Street, the greenhouse that they tore down, greenish gray house.
Yes, yes.
Oh, okay.
The one that has a fence around it now.
Yeah, that was two lots, and Austin made them join them, I guess.
Yeah, so then it's either part of the zoning code or an LDR, but I don't have that pulled up right now. And they also have not, I'd have to see how, they haven't purchased them yet. So, that would come along when they actually purchased it. But I'd have to come back to you with that zoning code section.
I think it's just something they need to do their due diligence on.
Mm-hmm.
If I can respond, they actually will be separate ownership names, so they will not be the exact same owner for the front property and the back property.
Okay. Could we have that screen with the two architectural drawings, please, Kate? Yeah. The one on the right incorporates the perhaps historic home. That would be the preferred one. Is there any way we can come back with a more detailed description or drawing of that, and then we can decide about the historic, if the historic home is incorporated into the new plan on the one on the right, then we don't need to worry about the historic value of it. Is that a thought?
Yeah, and again, this is just the preliminary comment, so you're not going to be giving any sort of vote or recommendation tonight. It's just the comments.
Okay.
If you had any other questions.
Yeah, Phil, I know this is a tough plot of land to work with and a difficult location and all that stuff, but I hope our feedback's been somewhat helpful.
Okay. Yes, thank you. So I guess the best, as I understand it, there is no vote on demo. I know in the past we've done some other projects further down on Pitt Street, one that we did where we came with a request for demo, and we received a vote on demo first, and then we received comments on our new plan. And so I expected to be able to leave this meeting knowing whether to incorporate the house as in the new plans or not. But now it sounds like, do I present you now? Tell me what to do next. I'm sorry.
So preliminary review, the process goes, you apply preliminary review, you get your comments back from the commission, and then you actually apply for your final review, and that's when you come back with your full set of plans. The preliminary review is just for comments to come back, so that when you do come back with final plans, that they are more complete, more of what the commission is looking for, and any hiccups that could have come up, they would talk to you about beforehand.
Okay. But on
you could also
previous...
come back again before your final when you're further along. You can have several preliminary reviews.
Right. There was a separate project, 957 Pitt, where I came to y'all. This was a couple years back, a year and a half ago, where we were given an immediate vote on that first meeting about whether that structure could be demoed or not. Thus, we knew which direction to go in a design. It sounds like you are asking me now to design two homes. I guess perhaps design one home with the house kept, moved, and then design a second home without the house kept and completely new, and then you guys would compare, decide which one you want. I know that sounds kind of silly, but that's what it sounds like.
Actually, it's up to you what you choose to do to submit for final approval for your next preliminary. But if I remember 957, that was a pretty complete set. I remember the house quite well.
Right. Okay.
In the past, we've approved demolition pending review of the design. We've done that before.
Yeah, but we have no sense of the design of this one. It's just, a big floor plan.
No, but I'm saying if he wants to submit for the demolition to no yay or nay, like we've done that before without plans. There was the one on Royal, the little rancher on, way down towards the marsh on Royal, and we approved demolition pending review of the final design.
Yes,
but
and just
that's what he has to
submit
in order for us to do that.
Just for clarification there, then that would not be preliminary review. You would actually be applying for final review, and you would give one of the reasonings for demolition. But if you're just looking for demolition, approval for demolition, then you can't use this reasoning, the one where the new design is better, if you don't have architectural plans. If if you're using, A, B, C, or D, if one of those work or two of those work better, then you could come to us with just the demolition plans. But the way that you have applied here, it's just for preliminary review, and these were the reasonings you gave for the economic rehabilitation and for the design, but we don't have a design.
Okay, so then
And as I remember, it's usually subject to approval. We give a
Okay.
preliminary demolition approval subject to final approval of the plans.
Okay, Kate, when we were doing this and you and I had that phone conversation and then also the emails back and forth, I understood it that we would be doing two things: A, applying for demo, and then B, preliminary comments. And so it appears that I do not have enough information for my second request, which was preliminary comments, and I'm okay scratching that. And so I still understood it that I was applying for demo, and I listed B and D. And as I understand it, D, it does not qualify for what I listed. So I think I'm requesting demolition of that existing structure based on B, then is my current request.
Can that be done, Keith, or does he have to present?
So this is just preliminary. You applied as preliminary, so you can't.
I thought
vote.
demo was a separate thing. There's not a preliminary demo and a final demo. As in my reading of the codes, you're allowed to apply for demo, and a set of plans is not required for demo. In my reading of the code, which we tried to scan pretty heavily prior to this, in order to determine what we wanted to submit. And so I apologize. That's how I understood it when I read it. I might be missing something, but.
Yeah, I mean, again, that house, I mean, there's two houses I can think of that they submitted requests to demo and we granted it on, like Robert was saying, contingent on the review of the new design.
Right.
Like the one on Pitt Street and the one on Lower Royal Street.
Yeah, so the application, you just have the preliminary review for demolition.
And we kicked it. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Again, I've submitted many things to the board in the past, but I've never, I've never heard of a preliminary and a final demo. I've always, as we've always done in the past, demo was always like the very first thing you did. You ask for demo, then you move on to a new house. And so I think what I hear you telling me is I have to resubmit as a final demo.
You needed it, if you wanted final review for this demolition, then you needed to apply as final review.
Again, and Kate, I'm not trying to be rude. I really apologize. If we're in person, I know it could be better, but I'm pretty certain in the codes that it says you can just, like, if someone owns a piece of property or is buying a piece of property and the current owner signs off that they're allowed to apply, you can apply for demo.
Yes.
That you don't need a set of plans to apply for demo. So we are simply just applying for demo. If I clicked a button wrong or something, Town of Mount Pleasant's website drives me crazy, so I apologize. But I thought I was clear in our conversations that A, we needed to apply for demo, and then B, we move on from there. That's why we've waited the month sitting around waiting on this meeting was applying for demo. And so now it's kind of, I'm extremely confused.
Well, why don't we go ahead and approve the preliminary demolition, and next month he'll come back with architectural plans, which would include the building or not include the building. But
I don't
if
know
we
if
go ahead,
we're all in agreement that the house should just be demoed. We have to discuss that.
Yeah, when one of his proposals is to rehabilitate it.
Yeah.
Yeah, which kind of lends me to
Demo,
believe it can
you
be.
know, one of the options is the rehabilitation. Then you can't claim that it can't be rehabilitated, which I believe is the basis in the code for that. And you know, I'm thinking, you know, if you want to, we can give him a, you know, like we do everybody else, you know, preliminary approval of demolition subject to approval of final plans, which means you can't really start demolition.
That's it. Would you like to make that, move that?
Certainly.
And so, since this is preliminary review, you wouldn't be making the motion,
Oh,
but
that's right. That's right.
it would
That's
just
not
really
final
be
approval. I'm
that
sorry,
you
you're
would
right.
recommend demolition if they come back with better plans.
Right,
That's
that's right.
basically what it would be permitted here,
You're
because we can't
absolutely right.
change it back to final review since it's already, it would require public notice. And so for the preliminary review, you can absolutely, you know, give your comment and say that you would suggest it be demolished, and for them to come back with more appropriate plans. But we can't make any motions.
It would be demolished if they presented plans that we also found acceptable, that were more appropriate for the environment and the location.
I think that pretty much nails it.
In other words, voting on-
Robert, we're also amenable to them moving the existing structure if they were to keep it.
Sure.
So,
Okay.
Well, I think, Philip, have you got enough on your plate now with,
Well, yeah, I out of the 3 board members that have done the speaking, and I'm not sure if that's the only board members on here, it appears that 2 board members are in favor of us demoing, and 1 board member is opposed to us demoing the property. I mean, the existing structure. And that's the best I can understand it. And so I still don't know what I'm supposed to do besides I just like in the past, and I don't mean to sound like that kind of person, but I've always had a vote on demo at our very first meeting so that we knew what to do. And it appears that my vote on demo is contingent upon what we're going to do is the best as I understand it.
That's the way we
Ms.
always.
Montgomery,
yes,
if I might add maybe some clarification, in looking up in the ordinance in section 156.432, number 5, it says where full demolition requests were granted as a result of new construction plans, or where the applicant intends to request new construction plans in the future, the permit for demolition shall not be issued until new construction plans have been approved by the commission and submitted for a building permit.
exactly.
That's what you're trying to say.
Mhm. That's what I thought. That's what I first said when we started this entire discussion.
So
Yeah,
that would be a permit to demo by the building department, and I'm asking for the commission to decide on this existing structure. But it sounds like
we
you're
can't
not
do
going to
that
decide
because there
whether
wasn't
you're not going to
public
decide whether
notice.
it's historic or not.
And then in the next section, number 6, permits for full demolition without replacement shall only be permitted for accessory structures and shall not be permitted for primary structures.
Yeah, I think we can't do anything tonight because it wasn't publicly posted, is what someone was saying.
Okay. Okay. All right. There's another board meeting in a month. There was a due date of plans today. I don't know if you as a board could ask Kate to give us the end of the week and we would get you the plans for this or not. I don't know how that would work. So we're not waiting two more months on this.
You can do the request and we can approve it pending when we see the plans. We've done that twice before that I can think of.
Okay.
You don't get the demo permit. You can't tear the house down until we see.
For next month's HDPC meeting, the plans were due today at 4 o'clock. Since it's after that and we're just hearing these comments, I'm just asking Kate if I can turn the plans in a couple days and still meet the March meeting if possible.
Mr. Clark, we wouldn't be able to defer the deadline. However, you do have until 11:59 tonight.
You don't
I know
need the
that-
plans
I
is
know
what
that
I'm
makes
saying.
sense.
You just need the request.
No, he has to have a full submittal. If it's not a full submittal, it's not accepted.
I thought we've approved demolition pending the final plans. We did that on the greenhouse on Pitt Street.
But as the ordinance states that I just read, it states that it has to have the new construction request with it.
Well, is that new?
I believe it is new.
That was done. Hold on, let me see if I can get a date.
Like, we're not granting that they can't go demolish it because we haven't seen the new plans. Like, we approved that greenhouse on Pitt to be demolished, and it sat for like 6 months before we got their plans, and they couldn't demolish it. It just sat there waiting. Then when they submitted their new plans, we approved it, and then they could demolish it.
So the ordinance was revised in August of 2020.
Yeah. So
Okay.
first comes the plans, then comes the demo permit.
Okay. Well, we will have, sounds like all you need is elevations. Sounds like you need elevations, and we can have elevations quickly, not by 11:59 this evening, but we will have elevations as quick as possible. And then Kate, if you can give me a variance for a couple days to get that to you, I would really appreciate it. So we're not pushed to the April meeting.
If you get in as much as you can tonight, the most complete application, you just, I can't, there's, it's in the ordinance that says the 4 weeks. So at a staff
Okay.
level, I can't
Okay.
go against what the ordinance says. But if you can just get me everything you can before the deadline of 11:59 tonight, and then we can work back and forth, if things need to be substituted in, just as long, as you have most of the application in, we'd be able to squeeze you in that way.
Okay. I will say that if the board grants demo, we would do a completely different house than if the board doesn't grant demo and wants us to keep it. And so as the board, would you rather see 2 separate plans, or would you rather just see 1 plan, or does it matter?
I expect that you will find that it is not economically feasible to incorporate the existing house, as I believe the people at 957 ultimately did when it was resold.
Okay.
I mean, it just seems the numbers work out that way when people look at rehabilitating the structure versus a new structure and adding on.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Thank you so much for your
Thank
time
you for your
and
time.
your information.
Thank you. Mhm.
Good night.
Good night.
Does anybody need a bathroom break?
I would
Okay.
appreciate one.
See you in a few minutes.
Thank you.
Are you gentlemen all tuned into my voice right now? Nobody can
Yes,
hear
Ms.
me?
Montgomery, just remember that everything is streaming, so.
Yeah, that's all right. I'm not saying any bad words.
No, I mean, as far as discussing items that are not, well, we're not in public session.
Right. No, I was just going to say, I do remember that it became written in concrete that you had to have plans before the demo permit was, and as you just looked up, that was last August. And there's also a timeline between demolition and beginning of construction, which is, what, is it 6 months you have to begin after demo? But anyway, that it's all in there. I don't have the complete book of guidelines.
I think once you're approved, I think you have 180 days to pull your permit, and then you have 180 days to start.
Yeah, so that's 6 months, right, yeah. Okie dokie. When everybody's back on board, let's, who's missing? Kate?
I'm here.
Is Lynette back?
Doesn't sound like it.
Okay. Kate, I'm distressed that there doesn't seem to be much of an effort to advertise for new board members. And we really have got to fill that extra seat. It's another Old Village seat.
Well,
Is
we did have somebody fill
I
it.
knew. Mr.
Yeah.
Player, yeah, I know.
And then tomorrow night, they'll vote, the town council meeting's tomorrow night. So they'll vote on a committee member tomorrow night.
But there are applications in. I mean, you know that for a fact.
Last time that Warren Player was chosen, there were other applications in. So
Good.
I believe they would just choose from those same ones. Or
Choose the runner-up.
yeah. That's what I'm imagining.
Yeah, right. Good. Well, that's good news. My, it's gotten dark. It must be late. Is it bedtime yet?
Yeah, well, it is for some of us.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, my camera just all of a sudden started working.
I see you now, right?
Yeah.
We thought you were MIA.
No, I was actually here. I was just about as confused as Phil was, though.
Yeah. Somebody's phone is on.
That's mine. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Everybody back?
Lynette, are you back?
I'm back.
Yes, ma'am. I'm ready whenever you are.
Good.
All right,
So
we
now
have everybody.
we can go to the next item, staff approvals. Now, on my sheet, it says number 8, yet on the screen, it says number 7.
Oh, yeah, sorry about that. I'm not sure.
It should be 8. That's all right. We don't worry about
Yeah,
it.
that's, this is just a report letting you know that 123 Mary was approved for a replacement roof. No discussion, just a report.
All righty. Next item, number 9, discussion on historic district expansion. Would you like to elaborate, Kate?
Yes, so I reached out to our contact at SHPO to see what was required next. As we talked about last time, surveys would be required, and then we'd talked about, what areas to survey. And when I started to kind of get down the rabbit hole with what criteria, why we'd survey where, I had, and I'm sitting in on the settlement community task force meetings. And with the deadline, I think it might be best to put this conversation on hold until we hear what the recommendations are for the settlement task force community, and then move from there. Because if they're going to be getting surveys, it's a whole grant process, and it might be better to combine efforts. And so that's what I've come back with.
All righty. I think that's an excellent idea.
And we talked about the settlement task force. That's for the area where?
So it's all over, really. It's Scalenville, 10 Mile, 6 Mile, Phillips. all of those settlement areas.
Okay,
And where I was coming from is if they do want to do historic designations, I'm sure that they'll have their own committee that or commission, they'll come up.
black, right?
I'm sorry?
All historically black?
Yes,
Yes.
exactly. Settlement, historically black, yes. That they'll likely, if they would like to have their districts, they would have their own commission. But to be able to make up their districts, that they would have to go through these same processes as us. And, you know, we asking for money, asking for grants, doing these proposals, it might be a good idea to just combine them and do one big proposal for surveys. And that was why I thought maybe we should just wait until they get their ducks in a row a little more.
Okay. So basically you're recommending a combination for grants, but separate historic
Designation.
designation.
Yeah, I don't see
And-
them wanting. Yeah, I don't see them wanting to be part of or under your commission's jurisdiction. I would see.
Oh, that'd be very uncomfortable. I wouldn't want that at all either.
Yeah, because you don't know about.
We know nothing about that.
Exactly. So what I think might happen, we really don't know. It's very early, but maybe they'll make their own districts and maybe they'll want their own commissions. But when it actually comes down to doing the research and applying, I would just love to be able to be on a team to do that rather than doing this all on my own.
Sure.
Yeah, so just combining efforts together, basically.
Kate, I think you and I have discussed there are dwellings in Old Mount Pleasant, particularly 408 Ferry Street, in which Miriam Brown, for whom the playground is named, she was a well-known Black teacher, very fine woman, very fine lady in civil rights action, and that should be designated historic. And I've been pushing for the Friendship AME Church, even though it was bricked in. I've been pushing for that. So I would very much like the town to research Old Mount Pleasant for dwellings of historic designation.
So you would like to move, we would have to get the surveys and apply, we'd have to do everything on this slide. So we'd have to come up with a research request and get bids to find a consultant to do the surveys.
Well, the home at 408 Ferry was renovated. It was very sensitive renovation of Mrs. Brown's cottage, with the main additions being added to the rear. So I'm sure they have site plan and information based on what they had to do less than 10 years ago.
Yeah. So then I'll ask, I'll just go back and ask them individual designations versus expanding a district, things like that. The kind of requirements. So I'll just have to come back to y'all. I'll write it down with that.
Ms. Montgomery.
Yeah.
Maybe to clarify, I think what Kate is trying to say is that it may be beneficial if you're grouping, if you have an area, like if you wanted to expand the district, that you would say, we want to look at these areas, and then that's how you would determine where your survey would be given.
Right,
Would be
more
taken.
cost effective to gang them together.
Exactly.
Well, I'd like for the town to investigate historic dwellings in what is now considered Old Mount Pleasant.
And that would be from which street to which street?
Well, that would be from Wilden out to Coleman, out to Ben Sawyer, over to Center Street, and then back to Royal, Wilden Pit, all that area.
And is that a motion, Ms. Montgomery?
Would it need to be?
This
Okay.
is just the discussion section. So I don't, I don't think so.
Okay.
It's not, right, Lynette? I mean, it's just requesting that staff come back with, I don't know. Actually, Claire, can you clarify what you're asking?
I'm
need a
always,
motion.
I'm always more in favor of a motion just because it gives that clarity, but I mean, basically she's directing, asking to direct staff on a project.
Yeah, so I guess it would be a motion.
All right. I move that the town investigate dwellings in an area presently known as Old Mount Pleasant for historic designation, the area being from Whildon over to Coleman, up to Ben Sawyer, back over to Center, and back down to Royal Streets. Or to Pitt.
Second?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I'll second.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor? Aye,
Aye.
Aye.
that's unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now we can go on to items the next agenda. Does anyone have any idea other than mine asking for a historic marker to be put on Old Town Hall, which is on Bank Street directly behind the Little Patcham's Post Office, which faces Pitt Street on the corner of Bank and Pitt, as well as the Miriam Brown House?
I thought that was the other historic commission.
If it is, then we can ask them through our request to look into it.
Kate?
Yeah, we can
Well,
ask them to request that. There is just for your information, we are the Historical Commission is currently looking into signage for an actual Miriam Brown sign, in addition to just the community center. I got reached out to Avery and got some of their information. Her daughter sent over history. So that's actually going to be on the agenda for the next meeting. We have been discussing that.
What about signage on Town Hall? The only thing on Town Hall is a plaque on the wall to the left-hand side of the double door that says who was on the council at the time and the fact that it was named for Chief Conrad Benton, better known as Skeeter Benton, who was the police force.
No, that has not been discussed or brought up for the Historical Commission.
Well, would you please ask them to do that?
Yes, so you are recommending signage?
Yes.
And Ms. Montgomery, you wanted a marker on where?
The Old Town Hall, which is a small wooden building now being used as a satellite police office, is on Bank Street directly behind the Patchett's Post Office, which faces Pitt on the corner of Bank. It is where the dog park is, but it's a satellite police station. It's being used for that. I have pictures of the town council meeting inside that building.
We
need that. We need those pictures.
We need copies of that.
If you haven't been in there, you should go in there. It's got one desk and a police officer sitting behind it occasionally.
That's cute. That's so
Big crime area.
It's great. Talk about Mayberry.
Yeah. Is there anything else anyone would like to discuss?
And the third thing is
I mean, I was wondering if we should discuss like the use of living fences, since it seems to be a touchy topic.
That should be in the guidelines. As far as to what constitutes a side fence line.
Well, I don't know the history. Maybe Kate can enlighten us, but it seems like living fences were added with the idea that they would be planted, but then we're stripped of any say on planting. So now people can build these living fences that don't have plants. I don't know if that was the like original idea or not.
In the guidelines, it states, not our historic guidelines, but it clearly states that they are to be planted within a certain time. But the town is so overwhelmed with projects that nobody goes back and checks on these things.
Right.
Well, there's also a lack of enforcement, and if you can't enforce something, then it's useless.
Exactly.
So like, I'm just saying, in the old village, like, what would be the terrible thing if you had to choose, from a fence that wasn't a living fence? There's tons of options.
So I'll put discussion of living fence on.
I wrote down discussion of use of living fences and possible changes within the guidelines.
Possible changes.
Yeah, I mean, it's just discussion. So.
Well,
Also, I think we need to discuss the enforcement of guidelines, bollards, those little wooden posts are being planted all over the village, the end of Hibbon Street, Mary Street, Bennett Street. They are supposed to keep people off the grass. Well, that grass belongs to the town. Some of them are being planted with lovely little white flowers. But if the fire truck comes along that street, it's going to run over your little plants. But the bollards are not allowed, and the guidelines say no.
Yeah, I don't know why they.
I thought they were asking people to remove those. They're asking people to remove those now.
They are, but it's not
Why
enforced.
haven't they? I mean, I thought Austin was on this 6 months ago.
I sent
Good
out
point.
letters. I sent out letters end of December, early January. I have not gotten back out to take pictures and see which ones are still out. That's what was the next step for me. I would take pictures and send a follow-up letter. But I have sent out violation letters.
At what point does someone get a fine? Because like, no one's going to react if there's no fine.
So there's nothing in our code, I guess, that would really fall under code enforcement if they were to bring them to court.
So Kate, maybe what we can do is for the next month's agenda, have an update on enforcement of ballards within the right of way, and you can include any way that it can be enforced, or how it cannot be enforced. Because it's not on the agenda, so we really can't talk about it right now.
Or just not specifically bollards, but I mean, anything that is in right of ways that, are not permitted by code.
This is why
It's the big thing.
you're right. This is why I've recommended and been ignored about having neighborhood ombudsman. People can come to a person who is a representative of their neighborhood with a question, with direction, pointing them into the right direction. Or when there is a violation, well, just be the bad guy and let the town know, okay, here's a violation.
Okay, so we have that on a discussion item, enforcement of bollards in the right of way. So is just summarizing, asking, we're going to recommend to the Historical Commission to look at signage for the Old Town Hall. They're already looking at signage for Miriam Brown. And then the two additional topics for discussion for the next agenda is the use of living fences and possible changes to the guidelines, discussing that, and then discussing enforcement of bollards or any other sort of obstructions in the right of way and enforcement. Is there anything?
Sounds good to me.
It doesn't make sense to me to talk about living fences and Corey, I think the idea would be good if we could enforce it, but we're already saying we can't enforce something as important as right of ways. You're not going to be able to enforce making people plant and water and take care of a living fence.
Right. Vegetation enforcement.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I'd like to just discuss whether or not we want to allow it anymore. Because it's clearly not working.
Works
Okay,
great.
that makes more sense. That makes more sense. I thought you,
Living fence all around my property. Of course, you can't see it because of the ligustrum.
well, that's the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah, and we'll leave that for the discussion.
Okay.
That's your enforcement that's not being carried through.
All right.
Any other items for next month's agenda?
No, I just think we need to hire more yard police.
Well, they're not going to do it. Lots and lots. So
Okay.
let's say the next meeting will be March 8th at 5 p.m. and probably will still be a virtual visit.
Likely, yes.
So may I declare an adjournment, or do we vote on an adjournment?
You can
You
You
declare
can
it.
just
You,
adjourn.
Mr. Chair, can declare an adjournment.
I am declaring, children, let us depart in peace.
Bye-bye.
Amen.
Thank
Nighty
you.
night.
Kate,
Thanks to
hang on for a minute.